Good morning, class. Today we're gonna watch an educational film about finance. I have spent hours and hours of my life reading books and watching videos by people in this industry, and so many of them are bad. But today I found a good one, and it was in the last place I expected. The 1948 educational film, Your Thrift Habits. The acting is hilarious. The prices they talk about make me want to cry. But the advice in this thing, I might show this to my sons when they're older. It's that good. So let's talk about it. I'm Ben with the YNAB team, and this is Sketchy Advice. This lovely new background, by the way, was made by the wonderful YNABers who came out to the Minneapolis YNAB Fan Fest. If you happen to be one of those lovely YNABers who contributed to this mural, be sure to scooch on over to the comment section and let me know so that I can thank you personally for my new lovely background. All right, let's watch this movie.
In the afternoons, the store across the street from school does a rushing business. At least one customer buys those deluxe concoctions.
This feels like a personal attack on me.
Meet Jack Firth. And look at that.
Look at that. Oh, look at that. Assuming this is roughly equivalent to the Strawberry Supreme, this costs around 15 cents, which equals about $2 in today's dollars. So honestly, not bad.
Boy, that sure is a swell-looking camera, Ralph. Wish my dad would get me one like that.
Well, my dad didn't buy the camera. I bought it myself.
You did? Well, how did you do that?
I just saved up for the camera.
Saved up? How can you save up? There's always something you have to buy.
I got Pete Super Delight, huh?
Got him!
Well, I just worked out a budget that allowed for savings.
A budget? Oh, no. I tried a budget once. Didn't work.
This has that wonderful thing where Jack is supposed to be 16, but he talks like he's 49 years old.
Oh, no.
This is my camera graph. That's the way I kept track of my progress in saving for the camera. Along this side over here, I have the savings marked off. And the weeks are marked along the bottom. I aimed at this dotted line to save $2 a week for 20 weeks, and then I'd have my camera.
Okay, I have never seen a single personal finance person suggest making a graph like this. And that's kind of a shame because this is kind of making my brain sparkle. I also like that he's given himself extra space to the side to account for the fact that his plan might change. I think that's pretty smart. But also, let's do some quick math here. This camera costs $40, which in today's dollars would be $535. So first of all, Jack's reaction of whoa, I can't believe you can afford that, makes a lot of sense. But also, Ralph is a psychopath for setting a $500 camera next to an open glass of Coke.
Yes, Ralph has a budget and a method of saving that shows results. If Jack were as determined to get a camera, if all of us were as determined to save for things we want, perhaps we could budget successfully and get some of them.
I love that reaction. Ralph picks up Jack's receipt and it sends a shudder down his spine. This kid can't emote to his buddy, but a receipt sends him into rigor mortis. It's awesome. But I do want to hone in on the voiceover here because I actually really like this framing.
If Jack were as determined to get a camera, if all of us were as determined to save for things we want, perhaps we could budget successfully and get some of them.
There's no talk here about saving for retirement or the fear of running out of money or anything like that. It's just hey, what do you want? And obviously we're talking about a kid here who has fewer obligations than an adult, but I like that this film centers the things that Jack actually wants and it frames savings as the way to get him the things he wants instead of just some virtue that we're all supposed to have so we don't die in retirement.
Is it easy to make a budget work? Jack will have to prove that to himself. If his taste is always as rich as it is this afternoon, it may not be easy.
Okay, rude. Also, was Ralph drinking his Coke with 2 straws? What's that about? Was he hoping Jack would just split the Coke with him so he could split the bill? I'm telling you, this guy's a psycho. He's weird. I'm not afraid to say it.
A few days ago, Jack saw an example of a budget. The budget his family uses. Out of its total weekly income, Jack's family allows so much for food, household, clothing. Each part of their regular expenses is allowed for in the budget.
Okay, we're going to dig into this budget because first of all, I want some clarification on these categories. What's family welfare? Is that like medical stuff, or is it like when you get a haircut? And what are benevolences? Does that just mean charity, or is it like when Knox begs me to like get a toy car and I'm like, here you go? Maybe I gotta start calling that a benevolence. It's also interesting to me that this budget and Jack's budget, which we'll see later, are both weekly. Prior to World War II, most people were paid weekly. Because if you think about it, it's one of the more intuitive ways to pay people. Like you do a whole week's of work and then at the end of that week, you get your paycheck. I feel like a weekly inflow of income that's consistent would actually be a lot easier for people to process when they're trying to manage money. We really should have weekly paychecks. Maybe you should like write to your congressman. Okay, so if we convert the numbers in this budget to today's dollars, this budget looks like this. And if we extrapolate it out for the entire month, it looks more like this. I don't really know what feeling this budget is giving me. It's definitely giving me a feeling, but I can't really identify it. I don't know, sound off in the comments with your thoughts on this budget. Give this budget a grade. Hey, they have his and her money. That's awesome. This is a healthy family.
Can Jack do any saving out of his income? Well, let's see. There's that work-at-home allowance of $2 a week. And Jack earns $6 a week working part-time in the library. Now combine these two, and we have Jack's total income, $8 a week, for Jack's expenses and what he can save.
Okay, so that's about $107 a week for Jack, which is about $428 a month.
Let's see. Regular, predictable expenses like lunch money, car fare, and then the expenses that aren't quite so easy to predict. Personal expenses, after-school snacks. Now let's try to hold that down to...
Oh, God, that was unnatural. Even the other half of the coin was like, no, don't. Interesting point here, too. Jack is paying for stuff in his life, like bus fare, buying his own school supplies, and going to the movies. And at least some of that is coming from his actual earned income, not just his allowance. I mean, I think there is a strong argument to be made that it would be really good for teenagers to earn their own income and pay some of their expenses, because I think that is the main way you start to understand the real value of a dollar. When A, it's coming from your own labor, and B, when some of it is going towards things that you kind of prefer not to be paying for, but you have to pay for, then when you do get to spend it on something you really want, that feels a lot more special.
There. Does that handle Jack's expenses? Look, there's $3 left for savings. That's more than Jack expected. What did he do with all that money before? There's one type of thing that ate up his cash.
Just a point of order, Jack would have to eat 16 Peach Super Delights in order to whittle away his entire savings. And listen, speaking from experience, I'm not saying that's impossible, but I am saying that we might be overstating the impact of his PSD, that sounded weird, on his finances.
He'd better write down a list of expenses to watch. Too many movies, too much candy.
I have never met a teenage boy or a man with this nice of handwriting.
$1, That'll knock a hole in the budget. Maybe not save so much this week. No. Want that camera. Budgets ought to allow for this sort of expense. Why, Jack's budget does allow for it.
I love that. Just being like, hey, when you plan ahead for things, then you can just go do them and you feel good about them.
That's simple. Just don't go to any movies this week. But that show at the Strand. Wanted to see that. And it won't be on next week. Can't go to both that and the class mixer. Have to choose. More fun at the mixer. That's what it'll be.
Why do we have like 50,000 personal finance gurus? This is awesome. Like, it shows him giving every dollar a job, and then it shows him in a scenario where he has money to do one thing, but he can't do something else. He has a trade-off. But crucially, that trade-off is centered around three things that he likes. He wants to go to the mixer, he wants to go to the movie, and he wants to save up for that camera. And all of these are presented as equal. There's no moral judgment between them. And the way he decides is he just goes, well, what would I like doing more? This is so simple, and we don't spend enough time talking about this.
Well, you can't have everything you want, and Jack wants a camera.
Peach soup.
Peach soup coming up.
No, a Coke, please.
Oh.
Well, you must be on a budget. How's it working out?
Oh, pretty well, I guess, but it's hard sometimes. Oh boy, I sure would like a Pete Super Delight right now.
Can we also acknowledge that this film shows Jack still eating out even when he's pursuing other financial goals, and that's presented as fine. He just gets a Coke instead of a Peach Super Delight. It's a fun way to hang out with his freaky little friend Ralph, and he likes doing it, and he can afford it. And there's nothing magically horrible about him spending that money at a restaurant. I know some people in Tennessee who should be taking notes.
Well, Jack, you can't stick to your budget all of the time.
No, Jack doesn't have to follow his budget, but he has made his own rules to save for a camera. As long as he follows those rules and chooses to save, he'll find that the pennies certainly add up at the end of the week.
Okay, this film has taught me that if you budget, you get weird emotional energy out of looking at receipts. And then another cool thing, he sees in the paper a football game he really wants to go to. He knows he can't afford it. He spent his entertainment money. So what does he do? He just postpones getting the watch a week. He puts his savings on pause to be able to go do a thing he really wants to do. And the film is just neato. But then maybe that was a mistake because his fancy 1948 fountain pen breaks. He needs to replace it, and fortunately, he does have a school supply fund.
He just has to buy a new pen. This one, which fits within his 50-cent school supplies budget, is not a good buy at any price.
It feels like this is a low-key attack ad on a rival pen company. Jack would never debase himself riding with a McCloskey pen. Real cowboys ride with Schwigglies. But again, he buys the nicer, more expensive pen instead of the one that fits in his plan. And that means he has to, again, postpone his savings a little bit. But the film is that's a valid decision. Your priorities have changed with this new situation.
Jack keeps going toward that goal. Every week seems a little easier until finally Jack makes it. Right on schedule. Isn't that a honey?
It sure is. And then look at that. He starts changing his plan, making adjustments based on his priorities to save more money because now he's experienced getting something he really wants through saving. And that is the end of the 1948 movie, Your Thrift Habits. And I love it. It feels so practical. It feels so grounded. It has nuance and it's so positive. They remade this film in 1964 and I kind of don't like what they did with it.
Boy! I was just looking at this new camera.
Camera?
Yeah, only $40.
Well, buy it. You've got a steady allowance and a good part-time job.
You kidding?
Well, if I financed your new baseball mitt, $8. So far, you haven't paid it back. Tony, maybe there's something wrong with the way you're handling money. Your grandfather once told me that thrift is the absence of waste. Maybe you don't actually waste money, but sometimes you are careless with it.
There's nothing super objectionable here, but the tone is just different. Jack's story centers his priorities first and foremost, and it doesn't really judge them. But from the get-go, Tony is doing something wrong. He's careless with money. His dad asks him if he really needed these shoes, as if the only valid reason to buy shoes would be needing new shoes. Instead of focusing on what Tony wants, it focuses on everything Tony is doing wrong and then tries to provide solutions. Remember how there are a couple times where Jack decides to postpone his savings a little bit in order to do some things he wants? Here's the closest we get to that in our 1964 version.
Well, it seemed Tony had made a good start. I knew, though, that sometimes he'd slip out of his thrift habits by buying things he really didn't want or need. We all do. But most of the time, he would remember the thrift habits he'd learned.
Yeah, sometimes you lose sight of your savings goals and you buy a Glock. Oops. Jack didn't buy a gun. He wanted that honey. Yeah, not every spending decision you make is going to be a fully, deliberated, rational one. But I think it's weird to, throw that example up instead of showing us what we see Jack doing, which is making a conscious decision between two things. If Jack had wanted to buy a gun, that scene would have looked like this.
Pete Soup. No.
Handgun.
Please, make it 2.
Right.
And isn't that better? I think what I find so refreshing about this is that it is so simple. but it is so positive. It doesn't ignore the fact that it is hard to choose between things, but it also doesn't like go overboard being like, listen, you gotta be able to grow up and figure this stuff out. And it doesn't act like it's giving you some like life hack that will let you like supercharge your finances without ever feeling mortal suffering again. The personal finance industry has an incentive to either overcomplicate money because then you need my course or you need my service or whatever, or to oversimplify money because like if you buy my book, I'll teach you the one secret, or if you take my course, I'll teach you the one secret. And it just makes me happy that in 1948 there was a movie that I'm sure kids made fun of in the lunchroom, but that was actually showing people like, here's this kind of middle way. It's not the easiest thing in the world. It takes intention and reflection and patience and some level of self-control, but you can have a better relationship with the money you have. Here's how you do it. And I'm guessing Jack's not around anymore, but I like to think that if he was, he would be subscribed to the YNAB YouTube channel.